Minister Wang, has China mishandled this crisis?
I think the system helped to handle the epidemic pretty effectively. People doubt about cover-up at the first stage, but naturally it takes time to face a challenge.
Was there a cover-up?
I don't think there is a cover-up. It is a very sophisticated issue. It involves a lot of agencies, a lot of expertise. So it takes time to make a precise judgment on how to deal with. If possible, I would like to explain. People say Australia is a Western democracy and we are a party state. Actually, we see ourselves as a socialist democracy. A simplest comparison between Australian democracy and Chinese democracy will be like this. You have a voting democracy, we have a working democracy, because efficiency is our top concern.
Democracy involves voting.
We vote. I was working.
Who votes?
People vote. People vote for the member of the National People's Congress and the People's Congress at all levels.
There's not a free vote to elect the leaders of China.
It is free. It is free. I work in the local government. I know how people are voted. Of course,
So how many votes did Xi Jinping win to become the leader of China?
Xi Jinping was voted the president, and in the party there's also a voting process. You don't know that. It doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Let me finish. I will take 2 minutes. Working democracy, why that? Because efficiency is top concern. We are a developing country. We need the efficiency to catch up with the developed world, with economic and social progress. And you have a deliberative democracy, we have a consultative democracy. We don't want to waste too much energy in the contention about ideas. At the final stage of parliament debate, at the threshold of policy making, we involve a lot of people in an extensive process of policy debate. When I worked in Beijing, our year plan need to consult with 8 parties who participated in administration and legislation. You don't know that. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And the final thing, you have a competitive democracy. We have an inclusive democracy. We don't think winner take all is a good idea for current China. We need to include everybody in the joint growth of our country. So if this policy, the minority might lose some interest, we will find another supplement way to make sure that their interests will be better protected. So it is difficult in this part of the world to understand how a democracy should work with one single leading party. It is difficult.
Let me bring in Vicky Xu. Is China a democracy, as he describes it?
I don't think. I think there are democracies written into China's constitution, but if they are practically carried out is another issue. And just speaking of cover-up during coronavirus, I would like to give us here a timeline. So 30th December, a Chinese doctor, Li Wenling, and he talked about the possibility of coronavirus in a private chat group with other doctors. He's a professional, he's a medical professional, so he knows what he's talking about. And he was taken away by the police, and he was forced to apologize, he was silenced. And 5 weeks after, this doctor passed away and he was infected with coronavirus. And the 7th of January, the President Xi Jinping gave instructions to inside of the party to other leaders about coronavirus. But China did not declare national emergency about coronavirus until 20th of January. And that's from the day Dr. Li Wenling was taken away by the police to China, declared emergency. That's 3 weeks. So I'm sure a lot of public servants were working very hard to figure this out. But I do think the 3-week gap needs explanation.
Minister Wang, was it a mistake to silence Dr. Li in the beginning?
The central government already sent an investigation team to Wuhan to find out what happened with Dr. Li. But he's a very respectable and commemorable doctor, and people will remember him for what he does. He's one of thousands of doctors and nurses who dedicate their life sometimes for the sake of this epidemic.
So let me bring in Stan Grant. Was the silencing of Dr. Li a symptom of the system? That's the question, really.
It goes to the heart of the problem in the system, and that is that the system is not transparent and it does not allow the free flow of information. And under Xi Jinping, that has only doubled down. As you know, there are more activists, more dissidents, more journalists locked up in China today under Xi Jinping than there was before. Wang Xining and I go back a long way because he was in charge of me, effectively, controlling the foreign media when I was in Beijing. When we would do a story on CNN, which I was working for then, that the Chinese did not want people to watch, and Minister Wang would know this, the screen would go black. So information was blocked from people. People that we would interview would often disappear, would be put under house arrest or detained. We were detained on numerous occasions, sometimes violently and physically detained, intercepted. So the problem in the country is that it doesn't trust its own people to allow the free flow of information. Hence, something like this can very quickly become an existential crisis for a country like China. When you add to that a slowing economy, increasing unemployment, increasing levels of debt, protests in Hong Kong, you reveal the fragility that sits underneath the autocracy of China.
The suppression of information that he's describing, that's true, isn't it?
I don't agree.
Well, you do black out the screen.
We were there together, and
yes,
you know very well what happened to foreign journalists if they didn't obey your rules.
There were over 600 foreign correspondents. Some are from the West media, some are from developing countries. We think sometimes the West media filter out the information, pick out a piece from the large jigsaw to portray China as a very autocratic country where if you go into the alleys, go into the street, talking to the people, you'll find, for example, according to Pew Center, 85% of the people agreed with what the government is doing. They think China is moving to the right direction. And there are 90 million Communist Party members. And each year there are 2 million more joining the party, 80 of them under the age of 35. If you think they are idiots, that will be insult.
But this is just a simple question. Do you suppress information by blacking out the screens when there's information you don't like?
What case you are referring to? But
Stan, I'm sure you can.
Numerous examples, and you know this. When something goes to air the Chinese officials didn't like, they would black the screen.
I'm not sure about which case you refer to, but we.
Okay, I'll give you an example. We did stories on Chen Guangcheng, who was a blind activist being held under house arrest by the Chinese government. When we did stories, the minute we would mention his name, the screen would go black. There's just one example.
That's a case related to Washington's involvement with the judicial process of China. And I think freedom of speech is also enshrined in our constitution, and the government is trying best to protect that on the condition it doesn't affect the social stability. And I think anywhere in the world, there's a periphery for freedom of speech. I don't think child pornography or pro-terrorist information would be allowed in Australia or anywhere in the world. So if we see the party's leadership is enshrined in the constitution, everything has to be done according to the Constitution.
Vicky?
I would like to add that in the case of Dr. Li Wenling, following his death, this is the biggest public outcry I've seen in China's social media in the last 5 years, maybe up to a decade. Let me finish. And people are so angered and saddened by this doctor's death because, he's the perfect doctor. He's the perfect Chinese citizen. He supports Hong Kong police. He supports all the Communist Party policies.
He's a party member. He's a
party member.
Yes.
He's a perfect citizen.
Yes.
Yet, he was silenced and he died from this virus. And on social media, the trending hashtag was, "I want freedom of speech." So the Chinese people think this is an act from the Chinese government party suppressing freedom of speech.
Anyone who obstructs the process of proper dealing with the crisis, with this epidemic, will be dealt with according to either party disciplines or the national law. There's no doubt about that. Several high-level cadres already lost their job because they are bad performance during this process.
No, I disagree. Wuhan mayor, on his way out, he was fired. When on his way out, he said he wanted to report this. It was a mistake. He didn't report this earlier, but he couldn't do it without central government's approval. So that delayed things. That is a problem of a centralized power.
Again, you are picking one piece out of a big jigsaw. Look at the scale the central government and government at all levels put in this national campaign, and we believe at this moment every country that have been affected should share the information, particularly the method of treatment and medicine and vaccines with every country, with the International Health Organization, so as to prevent this epidemic from further spreading. Look at how much effort the government has made. Wuhan has been locked down overnight. More than 30,000 medical staff have been dispatched to Wuhan and other cities in Hubei province to help their colleagues. And the whole population were advised to stay home. It's unprecedented challenge in human history. It's unprecedented campaign organized by the Chinese government against an epidemic, which is a common enemy of mankind. Not only what the sacrifice China has done is for the benefit of the world.